Boris Johnson has given his last speech as British Prime Minister in the House of Commons. He decided to leave his successor, who will be either boring former Chancellor Rishi Sunak or shaky Foreign Minister Liz Truss, with some good words of advice.
Number one, stay close to the Americans, stick up for the Ukrainians, stick up for freedom and democracy everywhere. Cut taxes and deregulate wherever you can to make this the greatest place to live and invest, which it is. Remember, above all, it's not Twitter that counts. It's the people that sent us here.
And in the end, you were wishing that Boris was still Prime Minister for all his faults and his lies, etc., when he signed off by rattling through what he said were his big achievements.
I helped to get the biggest Tory majority for 40 years and a huge realignment in UK politics, Mr. Speaker. We've transformed our democracy and restored our national independence, as my right honourable friend says. I've helped to get this country through a pandemic and helped save another country from barbarism. And frankly, that's enough to be going on with. Mission largely accomplished. For now, I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank all the wonderful staff of the House of Commons. I want to thank all my friends and colleagues. I want to thank my right honourable friend opposite, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank everybody here and hasta vista, baby. Thank you.
Brendan O'Neill, thank you for your time. What do you make of this leadership contest? Are you actually going to get someone better than Boris?
You know what? I don't think we are. And I think people are starting to wonder if it was a mistake to get rid of Boris in the way that we did, in the way that the media did largely, and of course the anti-Boris backstabbers in the Tory party itself. I think there are quite a few people out there now watching this race, which is heating up a bit, but it still remains pretty wooden, a little bit uninspiring. It doesn't quite have the magic and the sparkle that Boris had in 2019 when he went out to the public and said, "You can trust me, I'll get Brexit done. I won't treat you like the rest of the establishment has treated you." So I think there are quite a few people now saying, have we done the right thing? Are we now going to go back to boring cardboard politics? And that worries a lot of people.
Prince Harry last night gave a very weird speech to the Church of the United Nations, Now, before the speech, I have to say, he looked a bit wild and uncertain and unhappy. He was holding wife Meghan Markle by the hand, as he so often does. It's like a security blanket. His hair all akimbo. And the speech itself sounded like it was written by a hard-left anti-American activist, likening the United States to Russia.
We're living through a pandemic that continues to ravage communities in every corner of the globe. Climate change wreaking havoc on our planet, with the most vulnerable suffering most of all. The few weaponizing lies and disinformation at the expense of the many. And from the horrific war in Ukraine to the rolling back of constitutional rights here in the United States, we are witnessing a global assault on democracy and freedom, the cause of Mandela's life.
Now, your response to that undergraduate diatribe?
Well, it's very bizarre. I mean, Harry has transmogrified just into a pure platonic ideal of celebrity with all the contradictions, no normative content, and the United Nations shows what a pathetic institution it is, that it's just interested in glitz and glitter.
Is TikTok actually a sinister tool of communist Chinese control? Might seem an odd question, since the Chinese own TikTok is a social media giant used mainly by teenagers, often to post themselves singing or dancing. True, there is political content, but often as dumb as this, someone who identifies with the cat gender.
Okay, so first off, we have the normal meow that we just use mostly to get each other's attention. Meow. Okay, then we have the dissatisfied meow. Then the angry meow, but we only use this one on rare occasions because overall we're a very happy kid and family.
Okay, so you think, well, we don't need to know anything from these people, but a lot of private information of the users can get hoovered up by TikTok. And here's a startling fact. TikTok actually checks the whereabouts of users every single hour. Now, TikTok used to say, well, it's more than 7 million Australian users. You don't have to worry. You know, any information TikTok has on them is kept here or in Singapore. And TikTok would never let it get into the hands of the people back at headquarters in China. But that turns out to be false. Joining me is Senator James Paterson, the Liberals' Shadow Minister for Cybersecurity. Senator Paterson, thank you so much for joining me. TikTok didn't tell us the truth, did it? What do we know now?
Andrew, it's very hard to see how TikTok was being completely upfront and honest with the Australian Parliament, with the US Congress, or with the British House of Commons, because in each of those settings, they told us that our user data was safe because our data would be stored on Western or friendly or aligned country servers. What they didn't tell us at the time was that although it might have been stored there, it was going to be accessible in China. And we now know that for two reasons. Firstly, BuzzFeed 3 weeks ago published a leaked insider's account, a whistleblower account, of the fact that there were master engineers in Beijing who had access to everything. And in response to that, a group of US senators wrote to TikTok in the United States and extracted that admission from them. And in Australia, I wrote to TikTok Australia to seek the same clarification, and they made the same admission. Yes, although the data is stored in the United States and Singapore, it's accessible in China.
Oh, this woke culture. One last thing about that, you know, people claiming to be Aboriginal and you're supposed to ignore the fact they're white, or people claiming to be a woman and you're supposed to ignore the fact that they have all the bits of a man. And the result, well, here's one. Demi Minor, who calls himself a woman, has just had to be removed from women's jail in New Jersey because he actually made 2 women there pregnant. Authorities have been forced by legal action to accept he was a woman and jailed him with other women. And here is the woman, so-called, with real women prisoners behind him.
Hey, Mike, it's Demi. I just wanted to, kind of check in with everybody and give everybody an update. They changed my recreation today. So I'm in like this little cage, basically. Everything is just slow motion, but I want everybody to know, I'm doing all right,
I'll say he's doing okay. Impregnating 2 women. This woman impregnating women. Have you ever heard that before in your life? It's a crazy world, people, and it's getting crazier. How much longer will this go on? New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has been the celebrity leader of the international left. I mean, never mind what she's actually doing to her country, her economy, race relations there. Just look at her style, look at her smile, look at her youth, her wokeness. In fact, the ABC's new host of its, marquee 7:30 program, Sarah Ferguson, she's supposedly a Rottweiler in interviews, right? Snap, 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 snap. She simpered all over Ardern when she interviewed the Prime Minister 2 weeks ago. Get a bucket, because check what I'm going to show you.
That was quite a speech that you gave a couple of months ago to this year's graduates at Harvard University.
Sure. I would just point out our relatively low levels of debt, historically low unemployment, and good solid GDP growth. But apart from that, we are experiencing CPI increases.
Thank you very much, Tourism New Zealand. But I just want to talk about the phenomenon of Jacinda Ardern. It's very unusual for a Prime Minister of a small Pacific country to become a global celebrity. How do you explain the sustained interest in you?
Tell me how wonderful you are. How do you manage it? You've been hoaxed by the Albanese Labor government. This is astonishing, it's very serious, and it's going to cost us billions. You were hoaxed this week, specifically by the new Environment Minister, Tanya Plibersek, when she handed down a 5-year State of the Environment report commissioned by the government. And I'm going to reveal something about this bizarre report released a couple of days ago that no one else has pointed out and probably didn't dare. We're talking here about a report which the media claimed was written by top scientists, a report that was truly shocking, that showed that our land and wildlife were being destroyed, a report that the ABC told us, and note this very well, was written by 30 independent scientists from around Australia. Note that. A report written by independent scientists, whose findings Minister Plibersek accepted without question, She promoted them, in fact, as the last word on what experts were telling us about our environment, and that word was grim.
The report is indeed very disturbing reading. It says that our environment is in a poor state and it's getting worse.
In fact, Plibersek relied on this report, the one by more than 30 independent scientists, to announce a massive new promise. This government is going to lock away 30% of this country so it can't be developed. That is 50% more land locked away than we have already got in parks and reserves. But here's the thing. This is not the work of more than 30 independent scientists. Many of the authors are actually activists. In fact, Aboriginal activists, or storytellers, or curators, or culture warriors. And the authors who are scientists are, for the most part, not independent. Many are warmists of long standing, almost all working for government or government agencies. Not a single sceptical scientist was chosen to contribute to this project. Now, when you look at who was chosen, you will understand that a lot of this report is not science at all. It's a new green religion with New Age Aboriginal spirituality. Next week, Parliament's going to be back for the first time since Labor and the Greens won the election 2 months ago. Labor won government in the lower house. The Greens won the balance of power in the Senate. Labor can't get anything through that the Liberals oppose unless the 12 Green senators and one other senator say, yep, that can pass. And yesterday, the Greens leader, Adam Band, outlined his demands, what he wants from the Labor government if his party is going to support its global warming policy to cut our emissions by 43% by 2030. Now, this policy, could be disastrous. I'm betting it will be. But Adam Band says it's still not tough enough. But more than that, he wants Labor to work the fine print so that no future government that we vote in can ever back off these climate targets, even if the damage turns out to be too much.
There's a number of problems with it at the moment. It potentially puts a ceiling on the ambition. It means that potentially if a future government wanted to lift the 43% target, they might have to come back to Parliament. So, imagine a change of Senate that gives Pauline Hanson in the future veto over a future government. A future government might actually be able to put in a commitment to the Paris Agreement that's lower than 43%. And so if you're going to legislate, you want to Dutton-proof it.
This is so extraordinary. Here are the Greens demanding a law that stops Australians in the future from changing their mind and voting for different policies if the price of going green now turns out to be terrible. Daisy, a woman, Sal Grover, she's been on Sky News, said she was horrified after giving birth to be asked to sign a form putting her baby on a Medicare card where she had to tick a box calling herself a birthing parent, not a mother. And now Government Services Minister Bill Shorten said, well, look, as soon as he heard about this, he ordered officials to scrap this form and replace it with new ones using the word mother, not birthing parent. Now, what is the strangest thing to me about this story, and I don't know whether you agree, is that is it a form asking mothers to call themselves birthing parents, or is it in fact that this form is part of a trial that started under Liberal government, the previous Liberal government, and it's a Labor one that says, oh no, that's too woke for us, and has scrapped it.
Oh gosh, well, really, not a lot of that is strange, Andrew. I mean, we are living at a time where a niche group of activists who have a disproportionate amount of cultural and institutional power are lobbying to sort of normalise radical gender theory. And as for the Liberal Party putting in this kind of program, well, they've been trying to out-left the left really since Malcolm Turnbull came into the leadership. So, of course, this is a type of program that they would inaugurate. And as for Bill Shorten, being unwoke proverbially, well, look, maybe he's using it as a chance to make him look like the sensible for once. I mean, who knows, but it really is quite amusing.